My name's Neil Long. I'm an emergency physician at Burnaby Hospital, and I have a background interest in medical education. Surrounding the heart there's a sac, and sometimes that fills with extra fluid, and if that fluid gets too big that can stop your heart kind of filling up properly. Pericardiocentesis is the method of sticking a needle in basically and draining that fluid off. My role in the emergency department, if someone was coming in super sick and their blood pressure and they were about to crash, then we'd need to do this procedure to take some of the fluid off around the heart if that was the cause. Most commonly it's done by cardiologists. Some people have some chronic conditions and it slowly builds up, and the heart can kind of compensate if it's done over time. In emergency itself, it would be the trauma patient, either a stabbing or they've been involved in like a car accident and then they've had a crush injury and then that's caused bleeding around the heart. Once you hit the point where the patient's compromised and their blood pressure is low, then it needs to be acted upon. In those emergent settings, like if you don't drain that off and deal with the problem, they will die.
So there's very limited training opportunities now. So sometimes people can perform procedures on cadavers, which are quite costly and difficult to coordinate, and especially in these days, it's not easily feasible. And then the other option is to have some kind of commercial simulators. So they're usually made from some kind of plastic or silicone type material, and they serve to mimic it. But the problem is that these can cost up to thousands of dollars, and they have a limited lifespan as well. So there's only a certain number of times that you can kind of put needles into the pericardial sac before it becomes unusable. So there really is a huge gap in the training for this procedure.
One of the charge nurses had a friend that works for Microsoft. They said, we have this hackathon that's an annual global event that Microsoft run, where they get groups of people in the tech industry to solve problems, and there was a local group in Vancouver that were interested as nothing they've kind of done before, or an area or field they worked in, and they said, we're going to take this on for you. They had one person working in their lab with the 3D printers trying to create models, and then they had another group in the kitchen basically mixing up gelatin and Metamucil and coming up like which formula is the best. I really like the fact that they were aiming for as cheap as possible, because there is a model on the market which is $3,000. The team really focused on making this out of like cheap as possible materials and something you could do in the kitchen, so I was impressed with that. So basically they got any rectangle container, then they had code for a heart model. You fill that with your Metamucil and gel. For the chambers, the 4 chambers of the heart, they had little like kind of kids water balloons. They filled with water and put them in, and closed the model and put that in the fridge. They 3D printed out a rib cage, which would be a bit of a small expense. They had your rectangle box and they put the rib cage in, and then they filled like a part of that with some gel just to sink in the rib cage. Got 2 kind of little plastic pipes and stuck that in a Ziploc bag with the heart inside that, and then they had the plastic tubes poking out of this like box, and then put the rest of the jello on top and Metamucil, and then put that all in the fridge so it's set. And then so when you pull the whole thing out, you've got this like square jello thing with a rib cage, and then they put 2 pipes in, so one you fill water and then the air comes out of the bag, so you can keep the whole thing around this heart filled with water, and the heart's in the middle there.
The impact would be huge. So to be able to have a kind of a low-cost simulator that can be replicated would be hugely accessible to a lot of different other specialties, not just emergency, but also other things like trauma, anesthesia, cardiology, and also to many different hospitals as well as for training residents and medical students in the procedure as well.
And there's a global implication as well with developing countries where you can't afford a $3,000 model. Most health authorities departments can't afford a $3,000 model, whereas like if we find these cheap, easy solutions, then it's going to be accessible globally.